I should have known something was off when my manager, Victor, walked into the Monday morning check-in wearing cologne strong enough to clear a room. That man only brought out the fancy stuff when someone from upper management was lurking nearby. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, a surprise quarterly performance review was on my calendar, which was hilarious because we just had the official one 2 weeks earlier. Mine had been flawless. "You've been solid," Victor said, leaning back like he was auditioning for a role in a mid-budget office drama. "But we're doing some restructuring." "Ah, the corporate term for brace yourself." I nodded. "Cool. What's the new structure?" He blinked. That's the thing about Victor. He hated being asked direct questions, preferred vague PowerPoint buzzwords and dodgy metaphors. I almost expected him to say, "Think of the org chart like a river." Instead, he mumbled something about efficiency and streamlined synergy, which translated to, "Someone wants you gone, and I'm not brave enough to say it out loud." 2 days later, I was summoned to HR. The room smelled like dry markers and awkward silence. Janet from HR couldn't even look me in the eye. She handed me a bland termination letter that said I was being let go for operational reasons. No misconduct, no performance issues. Just poof. I asked for specifics. She shrugged. "We can't comment further." Cool. I packed my desk in 15 minutes flat, left the potted plant behind. It was already dead. Took my whiteboard marker, though, a small, symbolic victory. The walkout felt weird. I passed coworkers who looked up with that half-pity, half-relieved expression like, "Thank God it's not me." No one said goodbye. Even the intern pretended to be deep in an Excel sheet. Fine. I didn't need a parade. But what stung the most? Not the firing. Not the silence. It was that I didn't even get a chance to explain what I had built. See, 6 months before my exit, our company had been preparing for a high-stakes merger with a mid-sized European firm. Think boardroom chess with extra zeros. I'd been asked, quietly, to develop a secure communications backend for confidential deal data. Not even IT knew the full extent of it. I wrote the entire encryption framework myself, documented it manually, kept the core password offline, printed and sealed the instructions in an envelope, handed only to the CFO under very strict instructions. Only open this when the system prompts you at phase 4. Guess what phase we were in when they fired me? Phase 3.9. You'd think I'd be furious. Truthfully, I was more amused than anything. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you're abruptly cut loose from a job you secretly suspected would implode anyway. The first few days post-firing were glorious. I slept in, ate pancakes at noon, watched documentaries about whales and conspiracy theories, sometimes at the same time. I even downloaded a meditation app. Didn't open it, but the thought counts. My inbox was quiet. My phone? Silent. It wasn't until the end of the second week that a sliver of curiosity crept in. Not about what they were doing. No, I already knew the company would stagger through some clumsy attempt to move forward without me. I was just wondering when, not if, they'd realize they were locked out of the very system they needed most. By week 3, I started getting messages from old colleagues. One came from a junior analyst. "Hey, random Q, do you know who has the password to the merger portal?" I laughed out loud. Another, "They're trying to reverse engineer your system. It's not going well, everyone's panicking, but management keeps pretending everything's fine." Oh, honey. Then, finally, on a gray Thursday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail because, well, petty, but they didn't leave a message. Instead, they called again and again. Then I got a text. "Hi, this is Victor. I know things ended awkwardly, but we're hoping you could hop on a quick call today to help with something. Please. Please." Now that was new. Out of pure mischief, I texted back. "Which Victor?" He responded instantly. "Victor Chen, from SummitWorks. It's about the merger access. It's urgent." I let 3 more hours pass before replying. Then I sent one line, "Email me the request," and copy legal. A full 5 minutes later, I got a calendar invite with a vague subject. Merger Tech Clarification Call. It was from the company's general counsel. Now we were getting somewhere. The call was scheduled for the next morning. I wore a hoodie, made a coffee, turned off my camera just to be a little mysterious. "Hi, Ely," said Victor, his voice extra chipper, like we hadn't last spoken in the world's most passive-aggressive firing session. I kept my tone polite but flat. "Hi, Victor. What can I help you with?" He cleared his throat. We've been trying to move forward on some back-end merger elements, and it appears the encryption gateway is prompting for a final sequence key. Ah, I said. Yes, that's correct. And we're not able to locate it. Correct again. Victor tried to chuckle. It came out like a dying blender. I assume, he continued, you might still have it? Oh, I do, I said, sipping my coffee. I also gave a sealed envelope containing the access protocol to the CFO at the time. That would have been Mark Sillers. There was a pause. Then a quiet voice, someone I hadn't realized was on the call, muttered, Mark left last week. Didn't leave notes. Bingo, I see, I said. Well, that's unfortunate. Victor jumped in. So we're hoping you can, help us out here. Restore access. The system is delicate, you understand. I do. That's why I wrote it that way. Silence again. Finally, someone from legal spoke. A woman. Calm, professional. Eli, are you willing to assist us? We're prepared to offer you a short-term consulting agreement. There it was. I muted my mic for a moment and grinned like a villain in a B-movie. Then I said, send the terms. I'll consider it. They agreed to overnight a contract. Before hanging up, Victor tried one last attempt at friendliness. Hey, it'd be great to have you back in some capacity. I smiled. Victor, I haven't left. The system never did. The consulting contract arrived the next morning via email and courier. Nothing like a desperate employer to get legal moving faster than caffeine. It was full of the usual fluff. Non-disclosure, temporary scope, modest hourly rate, lots of we appreciate your cooperation. I read through it twice, then grabbed a red pen. I crossed out their rate and doubled it, added a clause that allowed me to work fully remote on my schedule and that I wouldn't answer any calls past 4 p.m. My dog's feeding time, obviously. Then, just for fun, I added, consultant is not required to attend team building activities, virtual or otherwise. They signed it without blinking. By 3 p.m., I was officially back, except not as an employee. No ID badge, no company laptop, just a private email and a direct deposit form. They had no idea how satisfying that felt. My first call was with a young tech lead named Darren. Poor guy sounded like he'd been sleeping under his desk for a week. Hi, Eli. Thanks for joining. I've been trying to decrypt the Phase 4 key, but nothing we do works. The system says it needs a string sequence match, but there's no reference anywhere in the documentation. That's because there isn't one, I said. A long pause. Darren blinked. I'm sorry, what? I designed that part to avoid exactly this scenario. Only a human memory match can unlock Phase 4. That human, unfortunately for you, is me. He exhaled sharply. So, what do we need to do? I gave him a small smile. You need to ask nicely. The next hour was a slow-motion train wreck. Victor, Darren, legal, and a few other execs trying to act casual while simultaneously begging me to turn the keys to the merger system. They didn't know it yet, but the password wasn't even a password. It was a pattern. When I designed the back-end system, I included something called a contextual fingerprint. Basically, instead of storing a code, it required the user to input a timed sequence of interactions. Clicks, field orders, and timestamps. Only I knew the exact rhythm and order. I'd done it for security, but also because deep down, I never trusted them. And boy, was that a good instinct. Victor finally said, Look, we know the deadline is Monday. We can't finalize the deal without Phase 4 being open. The buyer's getting nervous. What do you need from us? I leaned back in my chair, swirling a spoon in my coffee. Transparency, I said. Let me see the current documentation, system state logs, everything you've tried so far. Victor blinked. Because, I said, if I'm going to save your merger, I want to see just how bad you've messed it up first. The silence was delicious. A few hours later, my inbox lit up. Logs, memos, even a panicked Slack thread from the project manager that read, Someone please tell me Eli backed this up somewhere. Nope. I hadn't. But I had backed up the ethics module, a little tool I'd quietly built into the system that tracked when leadership made override requests without approval. It had been dormant until the day I left. Apparently, the minute I was gone, someone had tried to bypass my encryption framework and triggered the ethics flag. I smiled, because here's what they didn't know. That flag didn't just notify internal logs. It sent a time-stamped alert to the legal inbox of the acquiring firm. Oops. I spent the rest of the day watching them try to act calm in emails while their digital house caught fire. They had no clue I was sitting on the one thing that could keep the deal from falling apart, or expose everything if I wanted it to. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Sometimes closure isn't revenge. Sometimes it's just knowing you're the last piece of the puzzle, and they lost the box. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls, 2 urgent calendar invites, and 1 rather pitiful email from Victor that opened with, "Hey, just checking in to see how you're progressing on that access patch. No pressure!" Ah, yes, corporate desperation dressed in casual Friday. I made myself an omelet, took a walk, played fetch with my neighbor's dog because mine refused. Then, finally, I replied, "Reviewed system, detected ethics violation flags, preparing sequence reactivation. Will proceed under the conditions of transparency, documentation, and non-interference. Full unlock ETA. No smiley face. No best. Just clean, controlled words with just enough passive-aggressive edge to keep them squirming." At 11:02 a.m., I joined the video call. This time, half the C-suite was there. Victor was in a suit jacket but no tie, his "I'm still casual but very nervous" look. Darren looked like he'd aged 3 years. A new woman introduced herself as external counsel, which meant their legal team was officially terrified. "Eli, we understand from your message that you detected some sort of alert?" she asked, tone all business. I nodded, yes. The system logged an unauthorized override attempt within 48 hours of my departure. I could see Victor clench his jaw. We had to access the back end somehow. We didn't know the process. "Right," I said. "So you guessed?" Silence. I kept going. That triggered the ethics alarm. The acquiring company received a time-stamped alert. It's part of the protocol you all approved when we started this merger build. External counsel cleared her throat. "We weren't aware that feature existed." That's because no one read the full technical annex, page 42, paragraph 3. Darren leaned into the mic. "Oh my God, it was in there." Victor looked like he was about to combust. "So what do we do now?" "Well," I said, "that depends. If we want to avoid the appearance of a cover-up, or worse, deal tampering, you'll need to formally acknowledge the breach, and revalidate all access protocols through my reconstruction sequence." External counsel narrowed her eyes. "Are you saying we have no other option?" "I'm saying," I replied, "if you try another workaround, you'll set off the secondary trigger." They all froze. Darren blinked. "There's a secondary trigger?" "There's always a secondary trigger," I said. "This is corporate America." I let the silence settle before I offered the olive branch. "I'm not here to make anyone look bad. I just want the system used as designed. We can do this cleanly, quietly, or we can roll the dice." Victor finally muttered, "We'll do it your way." I gave him a warm, fake smile. Smart choice. We got to work. Over the next few hours, I walked Darren through the re-entry procedure. It wasn't just a code. I had created a rhythmic key sequence tied to temporal signatures. That meant you couldn't just type it in. You had to know how it moved, like playing piano by ear. Darren tried 5 times and failed. On the 6th, I told him to stop before he triggered a lockout. Then I said, "Let me do it." They granted me a secure access tunnel. I opened the protocol window, input the rhythm manually, and watched the system unfold like a blooming flower. The room fell silent. Then Darren whispered, "It's open." Victor leaned forward like he was staring at the face of a ghost. "Holy hell," I shrugged. "Told you it was delicate." They offered to extend my contract on the spot. "We'd love for you to stay on in a more permanent capacity," external counsel said. I paused, took a slow sip of coffee. Then I smiled. "No thanks, I have better places to be." Victor blinked. "You're really turning us down?" "I'm really reminding you," I said, "that loyalty is a two-way street, and yours was under construction." They tried to play it cool after I declined the permanent offer, but I could see it in their faces, panic, guilt, and just a tiny dash of, how did we screw this up so badly? The truth? They'd never even realized what I was really doing while I was working there. To them, I was just the guy in the hoodie who always brought his own mug and listened to lo-fi beats with noise-canceling headphones. They didn't know I'd spent 6 months building a system that practically ran itself, but only if you understood the logic behind it. Spoiler, none of them did. After I unlocked Phase 4, they were on their best behavior. I was getting thank you messages, praise in Slack channels I hadn't been part of in weeks, and even an invite to their Friday team appreciation lunch. Yeah, No, I politely declined and sent a DoorDash voucher to Darren instead. Poor guy earned it. But behind all that gratitude was pressure. They needed me to keep helping, but they couldn't say it out loud. And I wasn't about to jump back into the lion's den just because they'd finally realized I mattered. That's when something interesting happened. The acquiring firm, the other company in the merger, reached out. Their head of technology, a woman named Lila, emailed me directly. She wrote, "Hi, Eli. We were made aware of your work securing Phase 4. We'd love to chat about how you designed it. Also, congrats on building the most elegant lockdown trigger I've ever seen." I didn't even try to hide my grin. We set up a Zoom call the next day. Lila was sharp, professional, and far more competent than anyone I'd worked with at SummitWorks. "Your system saved us," she said. "Or at least, it saved us from investing in a disaster. We saw the ethics alert. We know someone tried to bypass your protocols." I nodded. "I suspected you might." "What I didn't expect," she added, "was that the only person with the decryption rhythm would be someone the company had already fired." I smiled. "Irony is the only thing that runs faster than office gossip." Lila laughed, then leaned in slightly. "We're considering revising the terms of the merger. There's a chance we may acquire you instead. If you're interested." "Me? You. Not SummitWorks." I sat back in my chair, processing that. She continued, "We're not just looking for a system. We're looking for the mind behind it. Someone who understands integrity and foresight. You've built both into your code." Let me tell you, after 3 weeks of radio silence and one frantic rehire attempt, this was the first real conversation I'd had that didn't feel like corporate gaslighting. I told her I'd think about it. After that call, I got another message from Victor. He wanted to touch base again, maybe have coffee, rebuild trust. It was almost sweet if it weren't so hilariously late. I replied with a single line. "No need. The system works. You just didn't." And then I went back to doing what I'd been doing for days, sleeping in, sipping coffee, and watching their emails get more and more frantic. Sometimes, you don't need to break anything to get revenge. You just need to walk away and let them realize they were the ones holding the sledgehammer. By the start of the 4th week, I had officially become a legend. Without setting foot in the office, word was spreading through back channels. Former coworkers were texting me things like, "Did you really lock them out with a rhythm? And is it true you coded a self-defense protocol?" One even said, "You're like the IT version of John Wick." Flattering. But if I'm being honest, I'm more of a vengeance with a side of almond milk latte type. Meanwhile, SummitWorks was scrambling. The merger had technically resumed, but now under strict oversight from the acquiring firm. Lila's team had enforced compliance reviews on all future system changes, meaning Victor and his band of PowerPoint pirates were finally getting leashed. It was beautiful. Still, part of me couldn't resist checking how deep the chaos ran, so I reached out to Darren, casually. I figured he deserved to know what was really happening, and he was too tired to lie. He didn't disappoint. "They're scared," he said during a video call, eyes sunken, coffee mug shaking in his hand. "Every executive meeting now starts with, 'Has anyone heard from Eli?' I think they expect you to blackmail them." "Blackmail?" I laughed. "Please, that would require me to care." He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, I know, but still, they messed up big time." "They did," I said, "but they gave me the perfect out, and I'm not stepping back in." We talked for a bit. Honestly, I liked Darren. He wasn't part of the problem. He was just someone who got stuck cleaning the mess. Before we hung up, I asked him something that had been on my mind since the whole thing began. "Who actually pushed the button?" I said. He blinked. "What button?" "The override attempt. Someone had to try it manually. The system flagged a physical machine ID. I just never matched it to anyone." He paused, then looked away. After a moment, he said quietly, "It was Victor. He panicked. Thought he could brute force it." I smirked. "Of course it was." Later that night, I sent a short message to Lila. "I'm in. Let's talk terms." Within 24 hours, I had a formal offer in my inbox. Independent architect, 6-month retainer, total freedom over my schedule, triple the rate SummitWorks had offered, plus a budget to build my own team if I wanted. I signed it that afternoon. It was the easiest yes I'd said in a long time. A week later, I got a certified letter in the mail from SummitWorks. A bland corporate apology for inconvenient circumstances, along with a vague invitation to stay connected for future collaboration. I scanned it once, smiled, and fed it straight into my shredder. They thought this story ended when they fired me. They were wrong. It ended the day I chose myself, and they finally saw what they'd lost. Lila's team welcomed me like a long-lost relative, one they actually liked. There were no weird power games, no doublespeak, no one trying to claim credit for work they didn't do. Honestly, it felt like I had stepped out of a sitcom office and into a Netflix prestige drama. And best of all, they listened. We kicked off my first week with a deep dive into their back-end systems. They wanted to understand my design process, not just replicate it. That alone told me everything I needed to know about their culture. During our onboarding call, Lila said, "We don't want a wizard in a tower. We want a builder who can show us where the stones go." I liked that. We talked encryption architecture, ethical triggers, contextual login patterns, the works. They were hungry to learn, not just implement. And me, I was finally doing work that mattered without having to dodge ego grenades every day. Of course, word got out. One of my former SummitWorks colleagues texted me a screenshot from an internal thread. It read, "Did anyone else notice Eli's name in the Rivals newsletter?" Another comment underneath, "Guess we shouldn't have deleted his farewell cake request." I laughed so hard I spilled tea on my keyboard. But here's where things got really interesting. Apparently, the SummitWorks leadership had hoped the merger would dilute the acquiring firm's influence. Wrong. With my system unlocked and Lila in control, the balance had shifted. Instead of absorbing their chaos, her company was re-engineering them. And once my involvement became official, the narrative flipped. Suddenly, I wasn't the disgruntled tech guy. I was the architect behind the platform. Victor even tried to rewrite history. I saw a press release he gave to some startup blog where he described leading a team to develop secure infrastructure for the merger. Sure, Vic, you really nailed that rhythm pattern, huh? It wasn't just petty. It was desperate. They tried to claim me after pushing me out, tried to take credit for a system they didn't even understand. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. I could have called them out publicly, but honestly, I didn't need to. Lila's firm responded with a very classy update. "We're grateful to have Eli Summers join us in an advisory capacity. His contributions to the merger process and his innovative security framework speak for themselves." Nothing mean, nothing direct, just the facts. And that one paragraph was louder than any revenge tweet I could have written. It said, "We see him, he built this, and we're proud to have him." I can't lie, it felt good, like really good. Sometimes justice isn't about loud takedowns or flashy exposes. Sometimes it's as simple as someone saying your name and meaning it. And every time Victor opened a newsletter and saw that name, I hoped it stung. Because the world didn't forget me. They did. The first time I walked into Lila's headquarters, yes, I eventually flew out for a strategy retreat, I was greeted by a mural in the lobby. It read, "Build systems that outlive ego." I stood there for a full minute, just taking it in. It was everything SummitWorks never understood. Over there, leadership was about appearances, posturing, petty power trips. Here, it was about structure, design, impact. Lila introduced me to the team in person. Real handshakes, real names. No one saying, "Let's circle back," as a way to delay admitting they had no idea what was going on. I was assigned a corner desk with windows overlooking the city, even though I was technically still remote. "Just so you know," Lila said, "you always have a space here." That meant more than I expected. The day after I arrived, we had a planning session to expand my system to support other divisions. Someone brought up the ethics protocol I'd embedded in the original platform and asked, "Do you think we should soften that flag for internal use? It might scare people." I said, "It's supposed to. That's the point." They all nodded. No pushback, just understanding. Meanwhile, SummitWorks was unraveling. I wasn't watching obsessively, just enough to catch wind of the headlines. The merger had officially restructured. Instead of absorbing Lila's company, SummitWorks had effectively been folded into it. The acquiring firm, my new team, had taken full operational control. And guess who got quietly reassigned? Victor. I found out through a LinkedIn update. Exploring new opportunities. Former head of systems at SummitWorks. The comments were all polite. Corporate speak. Best of luck. Let's catch up soon. But I knew what that meant. Someone had finally closed his PowerPoint for good. I didn't dance on his metaphorical grave. I didn't have to. There's a quiet satisfaction in knowing you were underestimated and then outlived the very structure designed to erase you. A week later, Darren emailed me. Not work-related, just a check-in. I left. Couldn't deal with the politics anymore. I'm freelancing for now. Thanks for everything you taught me, and thanks for proving it's possible to walk away on your own terms. I replied, You didn't walk away. You graduated. And that's how it felt. This whole experience wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about reclaiming power in a place that tried to strip it from me. It was about proving that the person everyone overlooks might just be the one holding everything together. I'd spent years working in the background, making sure the foundation was strong, even as people above me built glass towers. And when those towers cracked, they came back to the one person who knew how to keep it from shattering. Somewhere around the third week of working with Lila's team full-time, I got invited to a dinner. Not some stuffy networking event, but an actual backyard grill out at one of the engineers' homes. No dress code, no keynote speakers, just ribs, playlists, and people who didn't talk like walking HR manuals. At one point, someone raised a glass and said, "To Ely, who saved the merger and made encryption cool again." We laughed, but it hit me. This was the first time I'd ever been publicly appreciated in a room of peers. Not tolerated, not squeezed into some awkward team player award at a company off-site. Appreciated. I didn't say much, just smiled, tapped my glass, and told them I was pretty sure encryption was always cool. They just hadn't realized it. Meanwhile, back in the corporate graveyard, SummitWorks was in the final stage of absorption. No more branding, no more emails from their domain. Just a handful of ex-employees floating around on LinkedIn like confused survivors from a sunken ship. I got a message from an old HR contact who'd once overseen my firing. It read, "Hey Eli, saw you landed on your feet. I always thought you had more to offer. Water under the bridge, right?" Water under the bridge, right? I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because sometimes silence is the most generous reply. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure. I had everything I needed. One of the most ironic things, I still had access to some of their systems. Legacy permissions. They'd never properly revoked them. I could have wiped things, dropped harmless bugs, or sent an anonymous tip to their former partners. But I didn't. Why? Because the system I built had already done its job. It had outlived the people who abused it. And so had I. That week, Lila asked if I'd consider leading an internal mentorship program. Not full-time, she said. Just a few hours a week. You've got this calm energy people respond to. Calm energy. That was a new one. But I said yes, because here's the thing. Revenge fades. Headlines fade. But legacy? That's something you build quietly, carefully, over time, brick by brick. And this time, I'd be the one handing out the blueprints. It's funny. Getting fired was supposed to be the end of my career. That's what they thought they were doing. A clean break. A silent goodbye. A nameless dismissal with no severance and no scene. But instead, it became the beginning of something they couldn't predict. And definitely couldn't control. The mentorship program Lila started became something of a legend internally. At first, it was just 2 junior engineers and me on a Wednesday afternoon Zoom call. But word got out. People started showing up, not just for advice, but for clarity. They didn't just want code walkthroughs or architectural diagrams. They wanted to understand how I knew when to walk away, how I could build something invisible that ended up being unbreakable. They didn't say it out loud, but I could see the question behind their eyes. How do I survive when no one's looking out for me? So I told them the truth. Don't wait for someone to notice you. Design things that matter. Hide your best ideas in plain sight, and never hand over the final key unless you've already walked out the door. They laughed at that, but they took notes anyway. One day, Darren joined the call as a guest. His hair was longer, his smile real for once. He told the juniors how I'd walked him through the worst project of his life and somehow made it feel like a scavenger hunt, not a disaster. Later that evening, Lila messaged me. "You know what you've become here, right? You're not just the guy who saved the merger. You're the story we tell about resilience." That hit me harder than I expected. Because she was right. I wasn't the technician anymore. I wasn't even the architect. I was the reminder, the proof that you could be underestimated, dismissed, even erased, and still come back stronger, smarter, and quieter. Because sometimes silence is power too. So when I finally archived the last encrypted file from my SummitWorks days, I didn't do it with anger. I did it like you close a well-read book, slowly, carefully, with a smile. It had served its purpose. And now, so would I.